Where did you get your info? I'm so glad that you asked. We could start with this study, which was published in 2021, which states that 89% of Blacks and 80% of Latinos and 79% of whites spank their children. Here's another study which states that spanking in the home causes children to have subsequent aggression towards their peers in kindergarten. Go ahead and pause so you can read. And here's another study which shows the connection between spanking and adult mental health impairment. This study showed that spanking is empirically similar to physical and emotional abuse. Go ahead and pause so you can read. Here's another study looking into, does community violence exposure moderate the associations between maternal spanking and early child behavior problems? And they found that mother spanking was associated with elevated levels of externalizing behavior or violence towards others in the community. And then there's this study, which is called the primordial violence. This states that evidence shows the relationship between spanking and the subsequent slowing of cognitive development and an increase in antisocial and criminal behavior is shown. And here there is an abundance of high-quality research that has produced findings that are highly consistent from study to study, which show that spanking is a risk factor for aggressive behavior and for other social and psychological problems. Then there's this study, which is entitled Spanking and the Making of a Violent Society. Or you could look at this study published by the AAP, which says the use of spanking for 3-year-old children and associated intimate partner aggression or violence. Go ahead and pause so you can read that one. And then here's another study entitled Spanking and Child Development Across the First Decade of Life. Pause so you can read this one. And then we have this study called Relationships Between Parents' Use of Corporal Punishment and Their Children's Endorsement of Spanking and Hitting Other Children. Pause so you can read the results of that study. But to fully answer your question, we need to look at the statistics as well about the population in our country. So here we can see 60% of people in the U.S. are white, 18.5% are Hispanic, only 12.2% of the entire U.S. population is Black. And when we look at the data for violent offenders, 55.9% of all homicide offenders were African American, while only 41.1% were white. And that aligns with this study, which states that there's a disproportionate burden of violence, explaining the racial and ethnic disparities and potential victims of life lost among homicide victims, suicide descendants, and homicide-suicide perpetrators. Homicide rates in the African American community are 33.6 per 100,000, 12.9 for American Indian and Alaskan Natives, 6.9 for Hispanic persons, 3.3 for white people, and 1.7 for Asian and Pacific Islanders. So explain to me why 12% of the population is responsible for over half of the homicides. Don't tell me that there's not a connection between the violence at home and the violence outside of the home. That's where. And if you would like more information on this topic, I invite you to follow me so you can learn a better way. Oh, and by the way, today is Mother's Day, so I just want to give a shout out to all of the moms that are breaking these kinds of generational cycles and are stopping the cycle of abuse from continuing on in their family line. You ladies are the real MVPs. Love you all.